This is the Bama Podcast with Marty Solomon. I'm his co-host, Brent Billings. Today I am with Elle Grover Fricks to keep Shabbat with Josh Bossé.
Welcome, everybody. Shalom. You're here. You're listening to the Bama Podcast, and we are going to start this brand new series from little old me with a quote. I'm probably going to be doing this every episode, just to set the vibe. My goal for this series, this Sabbath series, is on one hand to give everyone maybe some more practical handles on Shabbat to talk about how we actually live it out in our context. But on a deeper level, what I really want, what I really hope happens, is that you all out there learn to really fall in love with Shabbat. Because once you fall in love, once you see what's really there in Shabbat, you can find it wherever. You can find a way to get there, to connect with it, to practice it. The Spirit makes all kinds of ways. So to kind of till the soil of our hearts, I think there's no better voice to get us in that headspace, to give us a taste of Shabbat, than to hear a little quote from Abraham Joshua Heschel.
There is none other.
None other. And I believe most of the quotes I'll be doing are probably from his book, The Sabbath.
It's a banger.
It is a banger. And this first one will be very appropriate for us talking about how to keep Sabbath. There is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be, not to own, but to give, not to control, but to share, not to subdue, but to be in accord. And what I like about this quote, and what I hope it will bring us into, is thinking about the first layer of Sabbath, this holy day that God gave us, in that it is set apart. It is different from the other days of the week. And this isn't just because, we don't work on the Sabbath or we take a day of rest. We rest every day. Hopefully, most of us are able to rest at least a little bit every day. But there's something deeper and more profoundly different about Shabbat, and that requires us to watch over it, to keep it. And we're going to be looking a little deeply at some of the words surrounding Shabbat and the commandments for Shabbat. But before we get into that, let's just talk about this word, Shabbat. What does the word Shabbat mean, Elle? Where does it come from? What's it about?
Oh, who knows? Just kidding. We got Genesis 2, pretty important place as we think about who God is and who we are and what the world is and what it's about. Mm-hmm. And it says in Genesis 2 that God took the day, and it has something to do, the seventh day, it has to do with stillness. There is a close word that means to sit or to dwell. That's yeshav. But this one is different. It's not moving specifically. That's what comes to mind for me when I think about where it shows up.
Absolutely. And in fact, yes, we all know, the first time Shabbat comes up is when God does it. God Shabbat's. God is still and stops working. But the next time it comes up is in a very different context. We see it pop up in Genesis 8, verse 22, after all the flood and Noah bringing the sacrifices, and God kind of comes to this point where he's like, all right, I'm never going to do this again. This was a lot.
Theologically, that is right on the
Yeah. We
on
could...
the note. You know what? I was being extra.
Yeah, maybe that's not going to be the solution going forward. We can't do a hard reset every time things get out of hand.
There we go.
And God says this, or actually, I shouldn't say this is Brent's job. I can't be putting Brent out of a job. Brent does a whole lot more than this. But
I feel totally secure in my work here. So if you want to read it, don't worry about it.
All right, I'll do it. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease, shall not Shabbat. And this is kind of the other side of stillness and rest. And this kind of also lays bare that rest is always something that's kind of tenuous. Like some things can't stop or everything would fall apart. We still need the sun. The sun can't rest on Shabbat. That would be a pretty crummy Shabbat.
I mean, depends where it rested at. All day sunset sounds like a party.
Ooh, there we go. Yeah, man.
Well, what I like about this is that you have the cycle of it. You don't have the harvest without the seed time. Mm-hmm. Like you go from cold to heat. You go from summer to winter. You go from day to night. Like that cycle will never cease. Mm-hmm. And so also Shabbat, the coming of Shabbat will never cease.
That's nice.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I want to highlight the other part, the tension of some things can't cease, because, you know, when we're trying to live Shabbat out in our lives, we can't necessarily just totally check out on Shabbat. You can't just put on your noise canceling headphones and walk around all day. Like, you got to look both ways before you cross the street. You got to, you know, if it's raining outside, you know, maybe don't leave all the windows open. You know, especially if you have children, like you might have to change a diaper on Shabbat, and that won't probably feel very restful, but you will have to do that. And that, I think, is the tension behind keeping Shabbat. But I before we move on to talking about that, I do want to kind of just meditate and hold on to the root idea of Shabbat being stillness, especially because, you know, as we get into all of the complications of Shabbat and how we live it out, at root, it is very, very simple. It is just stopping, taking a breath. It is slowing down. It is finding stillness. And I want to say that, first of all, because as we get into all the different contexts that you, the listener, might find yourself in, you know, a traditional, you know, Jewish Shabbat very likely is a little bit out of reach. And I've talked to a lot of people who are like, hey, I don't have like a full day. Like I can do Shabbat for half a day. I can do Shabbat for, you know, a couple hours. And what I want to, you know, anchor people in is that the root idea is just simple stillness. So to go a little bit deeper in the kind of the heart and soul of Shabbat, I want to look at how Shabbat is framed in the 10 Commandments. And if we look at the 10 Commandments, it tells us a lot, kind of puts a little bit of a narrative to Shabbat. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Shabbat of the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male slave or your female slave, or your cattle or your resident who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and everything that's in them, and he rested on the seventh day. For that reason the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. And what I like about this is that this is also, this stillness is not just an individualistic thing. It is a communal thing. It's not just you. It's extended to it. Not only your family, but everyone who works and labors for you. It even includes animals. Now, that's a very expansive idea. This is a stillness that isn't just happening in your house necessarily. Like in this picture, this is your whole community. There's just a stillness in the air. There's not, you know, people doing construction. There's just a total, full community stillness, even including people who are not Jewish, not Israelite, the resident who stays with you. And what I really like about this is, I'm sure we've pointed this out in the podcast at some point, but there's kind of a chiastic parallel in the 10 Commandments. If we look at the front half, I've often heard it said, even in churches, that, you know, they didn't know nothing about chiasms. They were just looking at the text where they said, hey, this first chunk looks like it's talking about us and God. The second chunk looks like it's talking about us and other people. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting is if we compare the two halves, there's a lot of things that line up. You know, we have stealing and taking God's name in vain. We have adultery and idolatry, things that we're all like, yep, those line up. What does Shabbat line up with? It lines up with, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. And that to me is very interesting. And I think it makes sense if we look back on, you know, what we mean here at Bema when we say trusting the story, and even more specifically, remembering what God's story is. Shabbat is a big part of that story. It is the reminder that creation is good, and it is us embodying that, incarnating that, we might even say. We are engaging with all the things in the world that are good, all the things that don't need more work to be done, the things that are complete, and simply enjoying that. And if we don't do that, it's almost as if we are not telling God's story. It is almost as if we are, in a certain sense, lying. But I don't want to just say lying, because this commandment doesn't just say don't lie. It says, don't give false testimony against your neighbor.
Yeah.
We're talking about like lying in court in a very formal setting in a way that harms your neighbor. And when we don't practice Shabbat or practice a full Shabbat, if we're like, well, me and my family rest, but all my employees still have to do their work, and you know, my animals are going to work too. Like that is like, you know, it's like lying in court. You are using a falsehood. The falsehood of rejecting God's story hurts other people.
I love that. And it brings me back to the Genesis 8 portion with seed time and harvest, cold and winter, summer and winter, day and night. They will not be still. That bounces me over to Romans 8, right? That all of creation is groaning and waiting with this eager expectation for the revealing of the children of God. Of course, part of the rhythm that God sets up in Torah for his people to follow is rest seasons for creation, for the land as well, right? It's God will continue to be faithful for seed time and harvest, but we're still commanded to let the land rest. And when we don't walk out our responsibility to care for the earth, which is the Lord's, right? It's just on loan to us. Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof and everything which is within it. Then we are telling a false story about what creation is and what we are and who it belongs to. So good stuff.
Absolutely. And boy, oh boy, we've probably already run into some little spots of conviction, not necessarily even for individuals, but on a communal, on a social level.
Certainly not for me personally. Definitely not. Never. I always perfectly rest and give the truest testimony to my neighbors.
Excellent. Everyone come to Brent's house and follow him as he follows Jesus. Open invitation. His address is the following.
Oh, dear.
I think this is good, too, for us thinking about how to make this time different. How can we look at the story that our life is telling and be like, oh, what is this? If the story I'm living out is what I really believe, what would this do as testimony if I held it up against my neighbor? If I said, oh, you're not working hard enough. You know, you're taking it too easy. That is the kind of like communal mindedness I think is necessary for this not to just be a chill day for you, not just a seeking of stillness for oneself, but helping that be an atmosphere, a pervasive reality that communicates, again, the goodness of God's creation. There's 6 days where we can run around and point at all the problems and work to make the world a better place. We have one day where that is not allowed. And God draws, we've talked about this before too. God draws a very hard line around Shabbat. There's a death penalty attached to this thing, yo. That's serious business. We need to get this right, especially because we're only asked to do it one day. It's hard, but we gotta keep it straight. We can't get this twisted. having that firmly in our minds. Now let's move on to this word for keeping the Sabbath. Keeping, which in Hebrew, the word for to keep in this sense is what, Elle?
Shamar, which can also be
Shamar.
translated guard.
Yes.
Hoo-ah.
Yes. And this is used all throughout Torah to talk about keeping the commandments, following Torah, obeying, all that sort of thing. But as Elle, as you brought up, like there is kind of a context of guarding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's specifically like a word of like someone is watching over something, like you are a watchman on the wall or something.
Absolutely. That's the case in all of our cognate languages. It's like a word for staying awake, specifically while you're on watch. It's used for eyelid in Arabic.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Okay, cool. Yeah, so keeping an eye out. So this is not necessarily about having your Shabbat be like hermetically sealed from anything that is not Shabbat. But this is like a posture, like, hey, be on the lookout for things that are gonna mess up the Shabbat, you know?
Its first use is Genesis 2:15, when God is again talking about creation in the garden, almost as if Shabbat is our garden, is our little Edenic experience that we're commanded to serve and guard.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I wanted to ask your opinion on this, Elle. I'm trying to remember what verse 15 here. Chapter 2, verse 15. Adonai took the man, placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. Some translations say tend it. But that idea of watching over, I think, kind of it doesn't just have to be this like militaristic, like hold the line. It can also just be like keeping an eye on something and being vigilant to be aware of what its needs are. Like if we're talking about the earth and the garden and planting and all those things, like you're not like standing guard there and flicking away every bug that comes by. You're like keeping an eye on it and seeing how it's doing.
Well, and it's paired with the verb avad, the serve word, which is used for, like in the Shema, we're supposed to serve God. And I think that pairing illuminates something about the watching and keeping, right?
Yes.
So it's not just patrolling around shooting down people who get close to it.
Yes, indeed. And, in the text itself, a couple times when talking about Shabbat, this word is used. It's used a bunch in Exodus 31, which we've actually covered, you and me specifically, in the Mishkan series. And we have, you must keep my Sabbaths, for it's a sign between me and you. I think it's talked about as like a part of it's a permanent covenant. And we have at the very end here in Exodus 31, in the end of this little paragraph, it says, you're supposed to keep Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Like it is the holiness and the importance and the uniqueness of the day that is why we have to keep an eye on it, because it's easy for it to slip into the status quo.
Right.
I've been practicing Shabbat. It is by far my longest running like specific spiritual practice, and it is hard even now to make it holy, make it set apart, make it unique and different from everything else.
I love that you mentioned that it's a sign in that Exodus 31, and I'm sure we mentioned it then, but there's something inclusive about that, in that that's the same word that's used to talk about circumcision. And one of the theories of the point of circumcision is it was something that a bunch of cultures did, but that Egyptians did to mark someone as having access to the inner mysteries of the priesthood. And so in that story, that's one way to interpret circumcision. I know there's lots of cool teachings about it, but that's one that I really enjoy. And therefore, this keeping of Shabbat is a sign between me and you, being all of God's people, that also marks them as having access to the inner mysteries of who God is and what he's up to in the world.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and actually, this reminds me a lot of how Heschel talks about Sabbath, that it's almost like kind of a little pocket dimension of eternity. And it's like, wow, we get to just jump into this little taste of heaven, this thing that is realer than even what we can see and what we experience in the world. We can make it real. We have access to this little secret. Hey, guess what? God's creation is actually good. That is really important, and I think kind of gives us the sense of what it looks like to carve out space for Shabbat, to carve out the time. And that's something where I really think some of Heschel's insights about the nature of and the uniqueness of Shabbat being holy time as opposed to like a holy space or a holy place, that, like a mountain or a temple or something like that, that it's happening in time. There's something qualitatively interesting about that. But I'm not going to get off on that rabbit trail. We're going to just move right along here.
Get behind us, Satan.
Yes, exactly. And actually, I want to quickly, before we get into all the practical nuts and bolts, I want to quickly refer back to the episode where we covered Exodus 31. And in that conversation about Shabbat and the Mishkan, the tabernacle, we talked about the word melachot, which is the specific word for work that's used in Shabbat. And you noted that it's rooted in this word that means to fill. And so it's this idea of work that is something we are filled with. Like, it's not, I'm making myself a sandwich. Like, that's not melachot. I'm making a sandwich for me because I want to. If I'm making a sandwich for a stranger so that the McDonald's Corporation makes money, like, that is not, I'm not making that burger for the love of the game, right? Like, I am doing it for some other reason. It's someone else's desire that burger gets made.
Right. And that idea comes from the word melacha, is the word for angel or messenger, right? And those are only people who have been filled up with the words of another person. They're not free agents. They're going about doing the work of some patron.
Yes. And I think that's really huge, especially, there are some people out there, I think I would be one of them, and maybe you are as well, where we actually like our work and have some level of control over what it is. And in some ways, that makes it sometimes more difficult to do Shabbat because it feels good to work. But I think a lot of people out there have work that is absolutely alienating to them. And they are fully like, I used to work at a call center, and you better believe that I had to, I was speaking on behalf of a company that didn't particularly want to have people get refunds, whatever it was they were angry about, and that sucked. And it's that sort of thing. That's an extreme example of it, where you just have to say literally a script that you're told to say and take all sorts of emotional abuse and tell people bad news, all sorts of unfun things. And, your work is probably somewhere on that spectrum, or maybe work for you isn't in an employment sense. But either way, the work that is the things that we fill our time with that we don't do because it's something, not something that we want to do. It's not necessarily just about our desires, but like something that is meaningful to us, something that we are doing for intrinsic reasons.
Which is why you still take care of your kids on Shabbat.
Exactly.
Despite the emotional abuse that sometimes occurs your direction.
Yes. And this is where, we've talked about this before with Shabbat. Like, there is no perfect way to keep Shabbat, and there's no imperfect way to keep Shabbat, because it's an inherently messy idea. We're trying to transpose this higher spiritual reality into a world that wants to kind of nudge back against that. So maybe one day when your kid's like, hey, I want a sandwich, and you're like, I don't want to make a sandwich, but I'll do it because I'm obligated to. Like, that's not the most Shabbat way to do it. The most Shabbat way to do it would be like, I love this child and I want to nourish them, and so yes, I will make you a sandwich. Who cares that I'm tired? I'm just going to make you a sloppy little sandwich, and you're not going to care that I cut the tomatoes too thick or whatever. We're just going to make a nice little sandwich here. That's like, peak Shabbat mindset.
So relevant as right before recording, my son asked me for a sandwich.
No way.
Immediately after I told him that we have no more bread. He's like, well, let me just check. It's like, dude, I would love to make you a sandwich, but we do not have bread.
So you're literally the bad dad in Jesus's parable, being like, I do have snakes, though.
Well, they had already eaten their bread. They had just had toast right before this.
Oh, man.
You're a fantastic dad. That's not my intention, but very funny. Okay.
That's how fortuitous. So with all this in mind, with this picture of what not Shabbat stuff is, I want us to think a little bit about or start to talk about what do we mean when we are talking about Shamar Shabbat, or for the big Coen brothers heads out there, Shomer Shabbos, John Goodman. This is what he's talking about. How do we protect Shabbat? How do we keep it from slipping into melachot, slipping into this kind of alienated way of living that often characterizes the other 6 days of the week? Really what this comes down to in terms of what it looks like practically is that to do Shabbat, you need to have some preparations and some boundaries, right? Like there are going to be things that slip in. Maybe you forget to turn your phone off and your boss emails you, and then you look at your phone notification and you say, oh no, there's something urgent. And even if you don't reply, even if you're good and you say, hold the line, I'm not going to let that little bit of work through, it can still mess with your head. It can still be on your mind all day. So this is where, using that example, I want to point out too, if that happens, that doesn't make you a bad person. Doesn't mean your Shabbat has failed.
But God will kill you.
Yeah, but God will strike you dead. No, I can tell you from experience that has not happened. This is more one of the other things that Heschel talks about that I really like when he frames Shabbat is that Shabbat is a thing that happens. It is a real thing. Whatever mystical way you want to take that on a spiritual level, Shabbat is a rhythm that God created, and it is happening regardless of whether we show up to it or not. And so the degree to which we are able to show up and to stay there and to keep ourselves there, keep other people there, keep that connection thriving and flowing through us, it's an art form, right? This isn't just black and white lines in the sand. There's an art form to maintaining that atmosphere. We talk about this in terms of knowing how to party. And just like any party, there's a vibe. There's an atmosphere. Are people getting on the dance floor, or are they all just standing around nervously at the edge? So that's a big part of what we're talking about here. This is an art form. There is a right or wrong way to do it. But the main thing to think about if you are wanting to start creating some sacred space is just simply boundaries. What are the things that you are not going to do? And it could be really specific. Turning your phone off, all right? That's a boundary. And that is a way to do that where, turning your phone on do not disturb. That's a great practice. If you do in terms of Jewish Shabbat, you would prepare by making all your food for the next day so you don't have to cook on Shabbat. So those are the sorts of things. We're talking about preparation. We're talking about boundaries. And what I'd first like to do is just hear from a couple different voices. Elle, Brent, what are some ways, I don't know specifically how you all keep Shabbat, but what are some boundaries, some things that you... Like pagans is how we keep it, Josh. We have forsaken the story and borne false witness about our neighbors. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm more bound by guilt. My method is I'm not going to send this email because the other person knows about Shabbat and then they'll think that I'm breaking it.
That's a point of community, man. That's good. I'm here for it.
Oh, yeah.
That's good. I'm only partially joking. We're still kind of experimenting in our household with that all looks like for us in that with young kids, so we at the moment of recording, we've got a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and it behooves the family to get out of the house at some point, but we're trying to kind of decide what works for us, because soccer for 3-year-olds is what we're trying right now. And that does not bring restful abundance to my soul for a number of reasons. Like we've tried, okay, maybe this will be like the family grocery shopping day or whatever, and that doesn't work for us either, of like we're spending time together as a family but we're still doing something. Doesn't work. It's still too much. The best thing that we've got going for us is walking to a park on Shabbat, a classic. That's in terms of what we do. So that's a different episode, but I won't be on those. So. For boundaries, George used to keep his phone off. George is my spouse, all day. And that is great because his job really revolves around emails in a way that mine does less so. But I definitely do not do email on Shabbat. I try not to be on Slack at all on Shabbat. That one's tricky, though, because I also work in ministry, and Saturday is the day that everybody else in the ministry is like, woo, time to start thinking about board meeting stuff. You know?
Yes.
And then not responding with my position is tricky. So we're still negotiating, and it's not perfect. You know, sometimes things go by and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna leave that alone. But sometimes there's stuff that you know, is more personal for people that does feel like it requires more of a response. So my family's still figuring it out, but hard things are no recording for me and George, which is a big part of my work. So no writing, no recording, hopefully no big tasks, but yeah, still figuring it out in this season, I guess. I'll think of more in like 10 minutes probably.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Be like, oh,
right
by the
after
way,
we stop recording.
I'm not a pagan. These are the things that I do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but this is a conversation. This is ongoing. And first, the things I want one of the first things I want to say here to kind of season this conversation away from the God will strike you dead side is that, you know, this is a difficult thing, probably more so than ever before. Like it is a very like of this era specifically where like, you know, you have your weekend, but your boss can just send you an email, and sometimes depending on your job, you might be required to respond. For a while, back when we lived in Spokane, Washington, my wife was working at a hospital, and she was required to work some weekends. You had to have a lot of seniority to make choices about your schedule. Even working for Impact, we will have conferences that go over the weekend. And there, you know, we'll talk about that. There's some nuances there of how to navigate those spaces well that can still preserve the atmosphere of Shabbat. But again, remember, this is an art form, and this is us. You know, we are looking at documents, text that you know, the Spirit worked on in people's hearts for a very, very long time, and Judaism has been thinking about for centuries and millennia. So we don't have that here in the modern day in our Christian tradition. We have not fully thought through these issues. So this is kind of we are, in a certain sense, this is kind of a pioneering thing. So if all you're able to do is just, you know, like the things that, you know, might feel not enough, but make the day different, like that is okay. That is enough. And as you said, Elle, I think this is really important. There's kind of a negotiation of those boundaries. For example, one of the things that my wife and I do is we try and get chores done on Friday. Mm-hmm. Not all our chores, because then, you know, a lot of times what we found is that if we like are super stringent and force ourselves to get every single chore done. Then what happens is Friday night when Shabbat is starting, we're like exhausted and we're still in that like hyper vigilant, like, did I get everything done? Or is everything checked off my list? And that is not a very Shabbat kind of mindset. So what we do is that on Friday, we look around our house and we say, what are the things that are going to bug me? Like, oh, the kitchen is dirty. That's a huge one for both of us, both me and my wife, but especially my wife, because one of her favorite things to do is baking. She loves baking. And so if the kitchen's messy, then it's just like throws that all off of rhythm. So, we get the kitchen clean. We, clean up any messes, any things that are like gonna get in our way. We also try and have some guardrails up to help us keep like on good topics of conversation. Like it's very easy, especially in ministry, because all our work in ministry is at some level relational. Like the end product of what I do is talk to people about God and stuff.
Right.
And these are genuine relationships that are building. And it is very easy to, in talking about just life in general, to slip into talking about work. And the same for like we do not talk about politics. Believe you me, we do not talk about politics. We don't talk about anything in the future. We don't talk about like, oh, hey, did you get that call from the insurance company? Yada, yada, yada. That is the sort of stuff that we don't talk about it. And we keep each other accountable if we start talking about that sort of stuff. This gets difficult when, again, like in a communal sense, there's a lot of people out there who don't even know the first thing about Shabbat, or people in our community who maybe observe Shabbat in a different way, and we might have them over on a Shabbat, and they start, talking about like the latest crazy political thing, and sometimes I'll get sucked into that conversation, and sometimes not. And this is where it's really important to keep the heart of Shabbat in mind. Remember back what Heschel said? Not to, not to have, but to be, not to own, but to give, not to control, but to share, not to subdue, but to be in accord. And if someone in your house sharing your Shabbat is pulling you into an area that you are just like, man, this doesn't feel restful.
We have no accord. Get off my pirate ship.
Exactly. Great. There's this balance of like, hey, I'm not going to try and control this situation. I'm not going to try and be like a neurotic, like Shabbat must be perfect, or I'm going to turn into a crazy person.
Well, and what a blessing for people who are able to keep Shabbat together, because that's not the case for me all the time.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Maggie and the boys almost exclusively use Saturday as their Shabbat. Mm-hmm. But for me, especially in the summer when I'm at a lot of weddings, Saturday is a work day for me. And, again, it's work that I very much enjoy. I'm working with people who I really care about, and like it's fun, but it's work.
Yeah.
And so that shifts my Shabbat practice more to a Friday or to a Sunday. But it's like they already did their Shabbat by the time I get home on Sunday. And then there's these expectations of things that I need to do. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, but I just want to relax for a minute here.
Yeah.
And so there's all sorts of complications. We don't have a society that's built around this singular day.
Precisely.
And so there's a lot of give and take, and being able to, I love that, not control, not subdue. Like, it's not going to be perfect because there are a lot of things working against us.
Yes.
Circling back for a hot sec to the conversation boundary, we definitely have that in our house. I don't think politics comes up as much for George and I anyway, or we enjoy that in a way that it's not like heavy on our souls. It's more just like, oh boy, and then we move on. But for planning, for talking about the week, for talking about work, there is both on Shabbat and also anytime after dinner during the work week is we'll promote a violent response from me. Absolutely not. Because when we're like winding down, spending time together, heading towards sleep, and then there's suddenly hey, so I have a meeting that's unexpected, but I really need to talk to these people about this thing before this deadline on Thursday or whatever. That is a big boundary betrayer in our household. So we maintain that one pretty closely.
Yeah.
We're also big on dishes are done beforehand. Absolutely. Same page there for sure.
And there's also like very like, I was going to say positive, not positive in like as opposed to negative, but like doing something as opposed to not doing something. Like we will sometimes, if we're low on food, we'll do our Shabbat shopping and we'll go out and we'll just buy, fancy cheese and yummy beverages and snacks and things like that. So a lot of this is like, again, like a lot of it's negotiation, and a lot of it you kind of can't know until you've had some Shabbats under your belt and realize, hey, what would be really nice? Like, oh, it's nice to, listen to music, but I always hate trying to like find music that really fits. It's like, okay, make a Shabbat playlist beforehand, figure that out earlier in the week. So preparation and boundaries are huge. And one thing I want to say, though, is that for us in terms of shamar practices on Shabbat, a lot of it does have to do with like mindset and attitudes. And this is especially helpful when you're in a situation where you can't have your full Shabbat, whether it's because of work or some other kind of circumstances. And that is like, like for instance, when I'm at Impact conferences, and it's a Shabbat, like what I do in my mind is I just remember whatever we're doing, like, hey, this is not pressing. This is not the end of the world. I don't have to, I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I give myself the slack to like, hey, you don't have to like strictly pay attention to every single thing that's said. Sorry to my bosses here, but that is the reality of what happens when I have to work on a Shabbat. I'm going to keep Shabbat in my heart. I'm going to keep that little fire going and remember that creation is good. So when we have a break, I'm not rushing to, when we're having a break between like meetings, I'm not rushing to like talk shop with other people. I'm going to go outside and just stand in the sun and use that little 5 minutes we have that way. And if someone comes up and talks to me, I'm going to try and remember to connect it back to like, hey, what's good in creation? And maybe it means I just tell someone I appreciate them, or tell them that I think they have a good idea, or just say, man, I'm really loving this sunshine, or that's a cool bird over there, or whatever the heck it is. This is where I think like understanding the spirit and heart of Shabbat and remembering, grounding it in, right, we're going back to creation as good, and that is the story that I'm trying to tell in my life today, both to other people and to myself.
The picture that I keep having come to mind as you describe the way that you interact with Shabbat is like once a week, a ship pulls into the harbor and it is an opportunity that we have to go on this party ship where we have an accord.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
That's all I could think of. And then if because of society or family needs or whatever it is with the sandwich or a presentation, Zoom meeting, whatever has to happen on that day, you try to take that onto a corner of the ship with you and be like, I'm still at this party. I can still feel the warmth of the fire. I can still hear the music, but yes, I'm in the Zoom meeting.
Yes, absolutely. And that is, I think what you just said right there is so important. And this is what I want to kind of end on as we wrap things up here is that, it's often said that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond to it, which is true. And this is also true for Shabbat. Like you can't necessarily control how you have your Shabbat, what happens during your Shabbat, what things intrude into Shabbat. And it's impossible to play whack-a-mole and keep all those things out, especially when you don't have a whole community participating.
Right.
But internally, in your heart, like when we look at these Torah texts that talk about Shabbat, like we have to remember we also have the Jesus-filled and Holy Spirit-filled side of things, which they show up and they go, hey, like, we can, in a positive way, we can break the rules. Like, we can, like, Neo seeing the Matrix. It's like you can rewrite the code. You can say, oh, I'm stuck in a Zoom meeting. That is a bummer. But yeah, you can instead, like, I don't know. There's so many Zoom meetings I'm in where it's like, I don't actually have to think that hard about something. A lot of it is just like receiving updates or.
That's how I feel about this one.
All vibes. What's going on?
Yeah,
Who knows?
Exactly. And, I'll spend it like looking at the other people in the video and just being like, oh, I hope they're having a good day. Like, oh, I forgot about that person. They're cool. I should reach out to them. That's nice. Oh, I'm glad this person's having a good day. Like, there are so many things going on around us. And in the same way that Shabbat, we're told that the work of creation was complete, even though that wasn't inherently true. There's still a lot to do. But on Shabbat, God decided to sit with all the goodness of creation. And in doing so, made it more complete. And this is actually something, someone brought this up to me. I forget who. I'm sorry that I can't shout you out properly. But as far as I can think of, Shabbat is the only spiritual practice we know that God does. Right? Like, that's really big. And I think that there is a huge part of us becoming more like God that is taking the Shabbat perspective with us and having that be like it's like a spiritual muscle that we're, maybe that's a bad example, working something out on Shabbat, but
God's the one throwing the party on the boat.
Yes, exactly. Another couple things I want to throw out, and this kind of goes into the headspace part of it, is, a lot of times in our leisure, we kind of let empire type stuff into that. Things that are like ways the world operates on things like that empire's big on, like competition, right? Only the best. Or like, kind of the way that when things are marketized, where it's like, you're not just getting a sandwich, like you want the best sandwich. Let's look up all these reviews and figure out which place is best. Like, those are the sorts of things where it's like, it's fun. Like, we play a lot of board games in our house, and there's a game we play called Nerds. And I happen to be particularly good at Nerds, but it's a very fast game. And when I play as best as I can, sometimes other people don't have a very good time. And so one Shabbat, I said, okay, like we've tried all sorts of different handicaps, and I can usually get around those, to be honest. So what I ended up doing is just saying, oh, what if I just played slow? What if I was just, very intentional about everything I was doing and focused on trying to go in slow gear? And all of a sudden it became fun for everyone because, it wasn't like I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was still trying to win, but I was just like, hey, let's just take this down a couple gears and engage with this in a way that isn't trying to, again, not trying to own, but to give everyone a nice time, not trying to just push everything to the max or find the best of this or that, like committing to, hey, if everything is already good, then what do we do with all this goodness? And looking at the way the world like takes goodness and puts it behind barriers and wants something transactional and like that is the sort of thinking that we can easily carry into Shabbat. And this is the last example I'll give. So, when we rest, a lot of times we watch movies or TV shows, and there's something, I think, a very fine line in how we rest that maybe this will be helpful. So when you're watching a show you really like, you tend to, after one episode ends, what's the next thing you want to do? You want to watch another episode, right? Because it's a great show and you're excited and you want to see what happens next. And they left you at a little cliffhanger. And we realized that sometimes, large chunks of our day would be eaten up watching a show. And that's not a bad thing. If your Shabbat is just you watching movies all day, watching TV all day, that's fine. But we found that kind of binge watching thing is not very relaxing.
Yeah.
And so we have a rule that when we're watching a show on Shabbat, we just take a little break between each episode. We just get up, you grab a snack, you grab a drink, you say, oh, I got to go to the bathroom, or hey, can I get you something? Or do you want to go for a little walk real quick? And it's things like that. This isn't about, creating this whole ascetic space where the world isn't allowed. But again, finding that way to be in harmony with all of God's creation, including yourself, paying attention to, like, what is it you really want to do? Do you really want to watch that other episode, or do you really just need a nap right now? Or do you need a breath of fresh air, or whatever it is?
Incredible. Lovely. Lose more games, guys.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
Exactly.
Take more walks. Say no to rotting in goblin mode. That's for
yes.
Gen Z out there.
Yeah.
A nap is almost certainly the answer. That is true.
Yeah.
I do like your game strategy, although I'm not sure that's going to change Maggie's feelings about Monopoly at all.
I mean,
yeah.
Monopoly has some kind of anti-Shabbat themes going already, doesn't
Monopoly does not have Shabbat vibes in general. So I own this. You owe me money. Maybe not the best type of Shabbat game.
Play Monopoly, but in the year of Jubilee mode.
Ooh.
Every time you stop at one of my properties, I give you 60 loaves of bread.
There we go. Yes, and play with real bread. Now that's a game I could play.
So much bread.
It is. That's what's so crazy about it.
But think about how little those houses are. Like a loaf of bread for them is like a crumb.
Okay. So it's kind of like poker, but with bread.
Did Abraham have to give the travelers like a camel to carry all the bread that he made for them?
They were angels, Brent. I think they can hold.
I know. Well, sure.
Maybe he did. Abraham's a generous guy. That's pretty cool. Oh. Well, anyway, as always, there's so much more we could say about Shabbat, the infinite spiritual practice of Adonai.
And indeed, you will go on to say more about Shabbat for the next couple of weeks.
I will indeed. But Elle, thank you so much for joining us and helping us dig into some of these words. And
yeah, someday we'll have a commune and we can do this together.
Oh yeah, the commune. A Shabbat commune. You might get me to sign up for the commune if we're doing a communal Shabbat. That's pretty tasty.
Having lived in Israel for a number of years, communal Shabbat is beautiful, but also kind of stressful because everybody's doing groceries at the same time on the same day and like shoving each other in the store and then yelling on Shabbat or like the true story, regular occurrence, or I've been spit on for going on walks on Shabbat that were too long, apparently. So, you win some, you lose some when it comes to community Shabbat. It's beautiful. You hear the horn go off, all the traffic's going to stop, and there's something magical about that. But anyway, little side tangent before Brent takes us out into the wide open vastness of space.
All right. Well, I'm going to link episode 331 that we referred to, and I just realized this, but those episodes covering Exodus 25 through 31 are episodes 325 through 331.
No way.
Somehow I did not notice that, but providentially lined up quite nicely. So,
folks, you got to give it up to the Holy Spirit. You got to give it up to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, exactly. That's the 3 at the beginning of the episode number.
the
Trinity situation. Okay. Well, anyway, that will be in the show notes. I'm going to throw nerds in there just in case anyone wants to check out Josh's favorite game. Is it your favorite game?
Probably my favorite, card game.
We're supposed to dominate creation, Josh, so you're just following the Lord's will.
There you go.
Yep, starting with my wife and close friends.
Totally biblical.
All right. Well, those things will be in the show notes at BamaDiscipleship.com. You can also check out groups, events, contact page. Everything else is on the website. So thanks for joining us on the Bama Podcast. We'll talk to you again soon for more on practically keeping and other things about Shabbat.
from that, let's get into this word for keeping Shabbat, which is the word Elle. What's the word?
Shabbat?
No. What's the word for keeping Shabbat?
Oh, okay.
Keeping.
You know what? This is great for me to be on the other side of the pop quiz. I'm like, oh no. Shamar. Shamar is our word for guard or keep. I prefer guard, but that's okay.
Oh, shoot. Brent, I'm calling a timeout to go back because I forgot I wanted to talk about the 10 Commandments.
Where is this? Where am I going to put this in? Just right before you ask Elle about the word?
Yeah, before I talk about moving on. I'd like to not move on